Do you think universities are getting better or worse in terms of intellectual freedom and courage?
Worse.
Yeah.
It's bad. And, it's not as
And is that not just among students, but among faculty as well?
worse.
Yeah.
No, the polarization is worse than it was when you and I went to college. And none of this is overt. And it's not that faculties are quote unquote tenured radicals, but the issue is what you're going to cover in a class for real, what's going to be said out loud, what sorts of behavior from students is going to be essentially tolerated, what sorts of programs are going to be allowed to be instituted versus which ones aren't. Most of it is underboard. It's kind of like racism. And yeah, I mean, if you're an institution that wants to keep up its endowment and make as much money as it can in order to continue, you are going to be pious where you need to be. And that's going to be the corporate understanding. And no one is going to stick their necks out. And so certainly I see people who feel one way as individuals, but it's understood that when they're in the business suits, none of that can come out. Now, that's not to say that there are people who aren't committed to there being free speech. Certainly that's there. And it goes differently from campus to campus. I can say, I'm lucky I can say, Columbia hasn't had an outbreak of student rage in the way that many other campuses have. And I'm not sure we're completely sure why, but there is also a strong, at least overt commitment to free speech. It hasn't been tested by anybody, on Hamilton steps screaming for any dean's heads, but still there's a commitment to getting past this kind of gridlock. But in general, no, academia, it's funny, talk about me getting old. Part of the way that I'm getting old is that I've been doing the race thing now for basically 20 years. I started in the year 2000, 1999, depending on how you count it. And one thing I've seen is that in terms of who hates me, in terms of where I get the most decisive snubs, it's academia. It's not so much the general public. I have my haters out there and I hear from them sometimes, but it's nothing like it was 10 years ago, especially since I've never put out the stridently right-wing message that many people used to accuse me of. The inveterate core of heated despising of me is among people with PhDs. And I think a lot of them would suppose that they're correct because they have PhDs. But I'm sorry, the fields themselves are such that there's such a narrowing of what they analyze and how they interpret data that I disagree that I've done anything to deserve that judgment. And that's a problem. But academia is not the world. And so the truth is that the world's views maybe are going to be more labile than those of our most scholarly classes. And that's just the way I think it's going to be. Frankly, I don't see that changing anytime soon.